I never thought I'd see Homeland Security storm my neighbor's porch. But when Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our HOA, cut the power cord to the federal weather siren on my property because she said it ruined the view. That's exactly what happened. One minute, the warning siren was blaring across the cul-de-sac. The next, it went dead, leaving an eerie silence that told me something had gone terribly wrong. I stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, and saw the severed wire dangling like a vein ripped open and Karen standing across the street in her robe swirling a glass of wine like she'd just declared victory. "Looks better already, don't you think?" she called out, smug as ever. That was Karen Whitfield for you 50-something bleach blonde, always armed with a clipboard and a god complex. As president of our HOA, she saw herself not as a volunteer, but as the ruler of Maple Grove, enforcing aesthetic harmony, one petty complaint at a time. Last year, she fined me for hanging my Christmas lights too aggressively. Another time, she blocked my driveway because her Lexus didn't like puddles. And now, apparently, she'd decided she had the right to silence a federally maintained emergency siren because it offended her serenity. I wanted to yell, but I didn't. I just sipped my coffee and went back inside. Over the years, I'd learned one thing about people like Karen: patience pays. 15 minutes later, patience cashed out. 2 black SUVs rolled into the cul-de-sac unmarked but unmistakably official. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Kids scattered. Karen, thinking this was her moment of glory, strutted down her porch steps like Homeland Security had come to thank her personally. They hadn't. The agents moved fast, one toward the siren, two toward her. She greeted them with her practiced fake warmth. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she said, clutching her robe. "I was just telling everyone how dangerous that awful noise pollution was." The lead agent didn't even blink. He held up a clipboard, on it a high-resolution photo of Karen cutting the cord with her husband's bolt cutters. I didn't even know the pole had cameras, but of course it did. Federal infrastructure. Karen's smile collapsed. "This is a misunderstanding," she sputtered. "I was protecting the neighborhood." "Ma'am," the agent cut her off calm and cold, "tampering with federal emergency equipment is a felony offense. You've endangered an entire county." Her face twisted through every emotion: shock, rage, disbelief. "You can't talk to me like that. I'm the HOA president. That box is on our land." From my porch, I just lifted my mug in salute the way she had earlier. They didn't arrest her that day, but the warning was loud and clear. For the first time since I moved in, Karen wasn't in control. I thought maybe that would humble her. I should have known better. By noon, my phone buzzed. She'd already posted on the neighborhood app. "Unjustly targeted by government overreach. Neighbors beware." The woman could weaponize a victim complex faster than anyone I'd ever met. Within hours, flyers appeared in mailboxes accusing me of colluding with federal agents. That night, she held a community meeting in her yard, complete with a megaphone and props photos of the siren cropped just right to hide the severed wires. When I walked over, half the neighborhood was there. She spotted me immediately. "Well, well," she sneered through the speaker. "If it isn't the puppet master himself, did you enjoy calling your friends at Homeland Security?" The crowd murmured. I felt my chest tighten. For a second, I wondered if maybe I had pushed too far, if calling the feds had made me the villain in her story. Maybe I could have talked to her first, reasoned with her. Maybe I'd made it worse. But then I remembered the silence that morning, the silence that would have killed families if a tornado had hit. I raised my voice. "Karen, Homeland Security doesn't take neighborhood suggestions. They came because you cut a federal wire." She smirked. "Oh, hear that?" Veiled threats, classic intimidation. I took out my phone, pulled up the county's emergency management page, and projected it toward the group. Tampering with a warning siren is punishable by up to $250,000 in fines and 5 years in prison. That's not my opinion, that's federal law. The crowd leaned in. You could feel the shift, the murmurs turning skeptical. Karen's face drained of color, then went crimson. "Fake news," she shouted. "Photoshopped," but the Gov logo was right there on my screen. For once, people weren't buying her spin. I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, hammering woke me up. I looked out and saw Karen and her husband building a 6-foot fence around the siren pole like a toddler blocking off a toy. I marched out. "What the hell are you doing?" She didn't even glance at me. "Exercising our property rights. If the government wants access, they can ask the HOA for permission." I started filming. "You're building a fence around federal property. That's obstruction." She smiled. "Or it's strategy. Let's see who blinks first." 2 hours later, another SUV rolled up. The agents cut her padlock, dismantled the fence, and handed her a cease and desist order. She screamed the whole time about tyranny and jurisdiction. I stood back, recording it all. For the first time, the neighborhood was laughing at her instead of nodding along. But Karen wasn't done. She called an emergency HOA meeting that evening, vowing to reclaim authority from outside forces. I went mostly for the show. The room was packed. She strutted to the podium in pearls and a blazer, waving papers like battle flags. "Friends, our neighborhood is under siege," she declared. "They've planted that monstrosity without consent. I acted to protect our land." I stood up. "You cut the power to a tornado siren. That's not protection, that's reckless." Her lips curled. "And who's to say you didn't cut it, Ethan? Who's to say you're not working with the county to drive down property values so you can buy us out?" The room buzzed. I could feel anger burning in my chest, but before I could respond, old Mrs. Jameson, who'd lived here since the 70s, stood up and said, "Karen, that siren saved my life in '08. If you think I'll help you get rid of it, you've lost your damn mind." Applause erupted. Karen's composure cracked. She tried to shout over the noise, banging her gavel like a judge in a madhouse. When the votes were counted, her motion to remove the siren failed 38-7. That should have been the end. But just after midnight, I heard clanking outside. Flashlights danced near the pole. Karen, her husband, and her sidekick Sharon were back with tools. I called the county hotline. By the time I got outside, the SUVs were already pulling in. "Ma'am, step down," an agent ordered. Karen froze halfway up the ladder, wrench in hand. "This is HOA property," she yelled. "No, ma'am, it's federal. You're violating a cease and desist." The neighborhood woke up fast. Phones out, lights on, everyone recording. Karen screamed as they cuffed her. "You'll regret this. I am your president." Her husband tried to argue until an agent picked up his bolt cutters, and showed him the evidence. He went quiet. The next morning, the neighborhood chat exploded: videos, memes, arguments. For a moment, it was peaceful. But then, unbelievably, Karen was out on bond, back on her porch, posting rants from her husband's account. The resistance has begun. And then came the final storm. Karen built her own freedom siren, a massive wooden box with wires dangling out of it, sitting in her front yard like a Frankenstein creation. She plugged it in and flipped the switch. The sound that came out was indescribable, a screech so loud it rattled windows and sent dogs howling. People came running out shouting for her to turn it off. "This is the sound of liberty," she screamed. Police showed up, cut her power, left her with a citation. She stood in her yard, smiling, drenched in sweat, basking in the attention. Days later, Homeland Security returned, this time to install a permanent, upgraded siren tower. 30 feet tall, industrial grade. When the crane arrived, Karen lost it. She marched outside, waving her citation like a flag, shouting through her megaphone. "You have no jurisdiction here, I forbid this." Nobody listened. The agents ignored her. The workers ignored her. Neighbors laughed. But online. Oh, she found an audience. Conspiracy groups started praising her as a patriot standing up to tyranny. Out-of-towners began showing up with homemade protest signs. Reporters, too. Our quiet street turned into a circus of flags, chants, and camera crews. That night, the new siren went through its first test, a clean, powerful blast that rolled across the sky like thunder. And Karen, she snapped. She ran barefoot into her yard, hair wild, waving a rake like a spear. "You will not control me," she screamed as lightning flashed overhead. Homeland Security arrived again, headlights slicing through the rain. "Ma'am, step away from the equipment," an agent ordered through a megaphone. Karen hurled the rake at the fence, screaming louder. "This is my land. You can't silence me." They advanced, calm but firm. She kicked flailed clods, screaming as they restrained her in the mud. The entire neighborhood watched, phones out, rain pouring, as she was loaded into the SUV, still shouting, "You'll all regret this." When the vehicles disappeared, the crowd clapped. Not mockingly, just relieved. Like an exorcism had finally ended. For days afterward, her house stayed dark, her husband silent. The Siren tower stood tall, unchallenged. The neighborhood felt normal again, or maybe just quieter. One evening, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee watching the sunset. Mr. Hernandez, the quiet engineer from down the block, stopped by and looked at the tower. "Funny," he said. "That siren was meant to warn us about storms. Turns out it warned us about Karen." I laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. And I realized some storms don't come from the sky. They come from people who think their noise is louder than the truth.